Dear Earthmates, we are visiting Diana Page. She's an artist from our planet, of course, from South Africa and residing in Turkey. And she's an internationally renowned artist, and the rest we'll hear from her. Thank you so much for accepting this invitation. And what would you like to say to Earthmates who know, there are people who know a lot about you, thanks to your work and colorful personality, but naturally many people, this will be a chance to meet you. So what would you like to say about yourself? How would you introduce yourself?
Well, I'd like to pick up on the idea of being an earthmate, because I think the kind of life I've lived over the past 16 years since moving to Istanbul and still having contact in South Africa, of course, and then traveling, because I have to say I have the privilege of having been able to travel, and that I do very much see myself as at home in the world rather than belonging to one country or another. And an interesting thing has happened. I think the more I've lived in Turkey, the more I kind of regard Turkey as my first home, actually. So I've always thought of myself as having two homes, but at the moment I think my first home is Turkey. And yes, I've been an artist, I suppose, all my life. I am fortunate to have an artist, a mother who is an artist in her own right, a landscape painter in South Africa. And I grew up, you know, alongside her in her studio, but never thought that I would become a painter too. I actually had my heart set on being an actress. And it's interesting how life can just show you different things. And at some point I decided that I liked the immediacy with which one could express oneself through art, through one's hands, through one's eyes. Suddenly everything made the most sense to me to become an artist and make things. Yeah.
Wonderful. And as for acting, if you still enjoy the idea, you and I could do something together on. I have.
Yes, I'm open to that.
I have a short play for two, and what, and yeah, so we have something on the agenda now, something else as well.
And my son is training to be an actor at the moment. He's graduating as an actor from university in the UK, Falmouth University. So here you go.
Wonderful, wonderful, great, great. And where were you born in South Africa?
Well, it's interesting, you know, you asked that, because I was born in Durban, South Africa, which is a coastal city. So my life seems to take me from one coastal city to another. So I spent a lot of my adult life in Cape Town. I consider that my adult home, Cape Town, South Africa. And then, of course, moving to Istanbul. So, yeah, Durban, Cape Town, South Africa. And then growing up in Grahamstown, which is a small university town in a very different environment, almost a semi-desert sort of environment. Yeah, but the color and light of that childhood has impacted on my work, I think.
And I'm sure almost everybody has asked a question about apartheid and what was the influence of that in your life, in your upbringing and later on. I'm sure many people will want to hear your views.
Yeah, it's it's an evolving story, Tarek, in a way, because I think I always felt fortunate to have had enlightened parents growing up in apartheid. So, I mean, I know I can speak to some of my adult friends now, and they didn't even know they were growing up in apartheid in a way. But I certainly did, and my father, who was a psychologist, spoke actively. He spoke on the same podium as Steve Biko once, speaking against apartheid, speaking against detention without trial, and I was very aware of that. But having said that, I mean, one also has to be aware that I grew up with white privilege. I grew up in a segregated society, in an all-white school, in a very abnormal situation in a way, and benefited from that privilege, and continue to do so. You know, so I think as a white South African, you keep interrogating that situation in a way. And perhaps it keeps one conscious, you know, in a way in which sometimes you find other people in the world who perhaps haven't had to grapple with these kind of questions, aren't necessarily as conscious of them. So although it's hard stuff to grapple with and keep grappling with, yeah, it keeps one conscious and questioning. Yeah.
And recently, the international some organizations have declared Israel to be an apartheid state. And another thing is, now thinking about the concept, actually many people in the world exercise apartheid mentally without being aware.
That's right.
For example, in Turkey, when we lack intercultural relations with our Armenian citizens, we are exercising apartheid, actually, without being aware.
Exactly, yeah.
Also considering maybe now Afghanistan or gender issues, there is also a gender apartheid when you, if possible to say. Yeah. I mean, when you put girls and boys in different schools, that's also a kind of segregation, a serious one. And so this concept of apartheid needs to be revisited, it seems. Now, when I think of it, actually, 2 minutes ago, I wasn't thinking like this, but now, thanks to you, I'm thinking about it. How about, what are, if before we focus on your works, sorry, what are some of the cultural differences between your cultural milieu in South Africa and the one in Istanbul, especially Turkey? Some of the differences that you found amusing, for example, or interesting, I don't know.
Well, I think there are differences and there's similarities. I think, you know, I arrived in Turkey with my family in 2006, and I think there was a sort of a window period between 2006 and 2013, maybe, where there was a kind of burgeoning of culture in Istanbul, which made me think a bit of South Africa, and the fact that I think something I thought a lot about was that one had the experience of Europe as being a well-grooved culture, where there were well-trodden paths that people would work through in their art or whatever they were busy with. Whereas there was a shared similarity between Turkey and South Africa, that as kind of transitional societies where there were things, new things that could bubble up, that were very fresh, that might be quite raw, but there was a lot happening in that sense. And I was happy to connect into that. And yeah, I don't know if I'm answering your question or going off on a tangent.
And excuse me. Apart from your mother, who was an artist,
yeah,
which other artists influenced you?
Well, you know, I've been thinking a lot about this idea of influences, because I think when you're younger, you're looking at artists, and I think it's a very important thing to look at artists and copy artists. But I think the older you get, the more the painters that you love, and well, I'm talking especially about painting, but the artists that you love, they come to live almost alongside you. And so Pierre Bonnard, a French painter, has always been a favorite painter. Chem Soutine, David Hockney, Leon Kossoff, you know, there are lots of painters, and they're new painters I'm discovering. But I also think an important aspect of one's work is, as you, because I mean, I've been painting for 3 decades or so now, is that your own library of work also stays with you. And when you're working on a painting, you find that something that you may have painted before, it's not a conscious thing, but it's also part of what you're referring to. Yeah.
How is your artistic discipline? I mean, do you have set limit time? For example, do you work in the morning, in the evening, or whenever, or wherever? Any preferences?
I think it's one of the greatest lessons as an artist is to learn what actually works for you. And that can be, it isn't necessarily, you know, I get up in a very disciplined way, and then I work from 9 in the morning till 10 at night or something. It isn't necessary. It's more, I know when I need to be in the studio, and I know when I need to get out and go drawing, fuel myself in a way. For that solitude, or I know when I need to connect with other people, other artists, or so I kind of trust that process. And also I keep sketchbooks. So sketch drawing is a very important aspect of my work, and I always have more than one sketchbook, drawing book going at once. And so whatever I'm doing, I have my sketchbook, or I'm thinking about my paintings, or, you know, it's a way of being in the world, really. And yeah.
Yes, that's what one of the things non-artists have difficulty in understanding, which is understandable, actually. Because they think that you do this now, and then you do this, and then that. But the artist's mind is always busy. It's always, your works are with you. There is no strict limits. And I think each field of activity needs a different sort of discipline. Military discipline is necessary for war, but artist discipline is another thing. And as you said, each artist needs to discover or herself.
Yeah.
Can we please see some of your works? I see. Yes, and
yes, I can show you. So this is from an exhibition that I've got. Can you see that, Tarek?
Yes.
Okay. This is the signature piece from an exhibition I have on at the moment at the Olivenhuis Art Museum in South Africa, which is a big solo exhibition. And this painting called Radical Innocence was actually inspired by, it was inspired by a wall collage I was actually doing on the wall of my son's bedroom. But he was at university in the UK during lockdown, and actually got locked down in Wales for 12 weeks. He couldn't come back to Istanbul, where he grew up. So I couldn't get to my studio. So I was making this wall collage just out of cut up magazines and paper and things. I kind of set up studio in his room. And then from that, when I finally went back to the studio, these strange figures that had evolved on his bedroom wall, which were kind of, I suppose, a bit about his sort of absent presence, but were also about thinking about his generation, I suppose. He's 20, he's turning 21 this year. And so I was thinking a lot about this generation of people that will go on long after, you know, the rest of us have moved on. And so hence the title Radical Innocence. And so it was a painting that, like a lot of my paintings, developed over quite a few months after that. And starting also with the idea of social distance, when we were all just kind of working out what that really was, you know, people having to suddenly stand further away from each other. And it started out looking at that and how that manifested itself in the city. And then from there, it, as often happens with a painting, it set off its own conversation. And I let it develop much more intuitively. Even bringing in, you know, I kind of think this large figure here might even have been inspired by a visit to Aphrodisias and looking at some of those monumental sculptures. And so I did drawings from there, and these found their way into the painting. And also I think some of the sort of, there's some suggestion of interference that we got from, you know, having to communicate like this, sort of digital, unnatural colors and things. You know, there was a lot that appeared, which I wasn't consciously putting there, but now looking at it, I can kind of see it. And then if we move on, this is also a very layered work, which started off, as some paintings do, with a very immediate experience of swimming in the Bosphorus, which I really enjoy doing here in Istanbul. And I started it one summer, and then actually the following summer continued to work on the piece, layering it. And I titled it Sea Change, because it was also the sense again that that through the lockdown we were going through this significant sea change. So that was, this one happened much more immediately, a similar sort of theme, the bathers. Of course, you know, you can't also title a painting The Bathers without referencing Cézanne's Bathers, because I think it's such an important thing. You know, you were asking about influences, so just to pick up on that, such an important thing for artists to realize that you know, you're not creating in a vacuum, you're creating within this incredible tradition, which goes back to when people first put marks on the walls of caves. And then perhaps this is a painting called Aphrodisias, based on the visit to Aphrodisias in the heat of Turkey's summer. And it was actually the first time that we had a car in Turkey in 16 years. We finally decided we'd rent a car, and found that all these wonderful sites were empty, of course. And so it was a particular wonderful day where we had Aphrodisias to ourselves. And so this painting was just about my complete joy and amazement in that experience. And then to take you perhaps, this was inspired by, this goes back to 2019, and actually one thing I will do in my life is travel to see exhibitions, and it's, for me, it's almost, you know, it's quite a sacred thing for me to actually do a pilgrimage to an exhibition. And this one was to see the English painter Patrick Heron's big retrospective at Tate St. Ives. And so it was wonderful not only to see the exhibition, and later I wrote about the exhibition, but to walk the cliffs, the coastal paths that he walked every day, to explore exactly the environment he had explored in his paintings, and to do lots of drawings myself. And so when I got back to Istanbul, I was really excited about doing these paintings. So this is the path to St. Ives. This is a big triptych. It's actually 3 paintings, 130 by 150 centimeters. So it's a big piece, and these are the individual pieces. But I often think my paintings are actually drawings on canvas. Because it's so much about drawing and mark making. This is Tall Pink, which references a painting of his which he called Tall Purple, actually. The foxgloves appearing on the English cliffs of Cornwall. Botellac is an old mining settlement, the old tin mines of Cornwall, which were quite, you know, like so many mines, rather awful places to work. And the relics of these strange places are on the coast of Cornwall, including this one called Botellac. And then we're back to the Bosphorus with the Gulls Way. And this is a very worked painting, again, lots of layers going on here. Before I was happy that I had said what I needed to. Yeah. Shall I carry on, Tarek, or?
Yes, I'm fascinated. Yes.
Okay.
I want to say something. I'm not afraid of sounding silly.
Yeah.
Or ignorant. I'm silly and ignorant. So what? And but I want to say that your paintings to me, they are democratic in the sense that you are open to all sorts of whatever exists in world art. You're open to them. For example, you do not limit yourself to figures. You do not limit yourself to abstract. They are all together very joyfully, warmly. So you enjoy, I think, adventures and a variety, very dynamic, to me, very lively and pleasing to my eye, and also inviting me to thinking and exploring and contributing to my joy of life. You know, these are the words that come to my mind.
Well, thank you, Tarek. I mean, I had never thought of it as so much as a democratic thing, but certainly the openness of what I'm exploring is important to me. And, you know, thinking more and more about that I almost feel like I do a certain proportion of the work as the painter, and the viewer needs to do the other proportion, needs to complete the work in whatever.
Yes, that's very important. And
yes.
That's exactly what I enjoy when I write poetry. I want active readers. Yes. I don't want to adventurous readers, and your approach is similar in that sense. Our approaches are similar. We trust the viewer, we trust the reader, and invite the viewer's imagination. And okay, here is a platform. Enjoy your own imagination as well.
Yes, exactly, Tarek. And I mean, I do describe my paintings as poem-like in that sense. And if you look at this painting, which is called Harlequin's Table, you know, it's so interesting having an exhibition because when you put all the work together, I myself have suddenly understand things in different ways. You know, it's an opportunity to look at the work differently. And I've sort of realized that this painting, which is, you know, it starts out as a painting of all my art materials and paints and spray bottles and all sorts of things, and becomes this. I called it Harlequin's Table because the act of painting, it has to have wit, it has to incorporate chance, it has to almost be a puzzle, and all those things somehow refer back to the Harlequin, and of course Picasso's Harlequins as well, which I've always loved his Harlequin paintings. So yeah, that I kind of realize that it has an important place in the exhibition, although it's not, you know, as you say, it's not landscape, it's not figures, it's something else again.
Will you please give some information about Harlequin?
The Harlequin as the clown, as the trickster, as the
We artists are
yes.
tricksters in a way.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Oh, and then in this painting, I move back to South Africa, and I had occasion last year. I had to go to South Africa for family reasons, and I spent some time in the Fynbos, which is The fynbos of South Africa is it's an incredible indigenous plant area, and it has some extraordinary number of wild plants under the umbrella of the fynbos. And so I spent some time drawing in the walking in the fynbos, and actually walking my mother's dog. So one of the paintings is called Jades Path. And I did drawings and I walked in the fynbos every day. And when I came back to Istanbul, I just knew that while I had this very fresh, very immediate experience of having been just immersed in this incredible bush, that I must paint it. And so I had 3 big canvases, and I didn't want it to be a view of nature, so to speak, of the natural world. I wanted it to have that sense of actually being in it. And they were really interesting paintings in that they happened quite quickly, and I had a strong feeling that I mustn't use brushes. So I actually used cloth, and I used the back of my paintbrush, and I used all kinds of ways to make marks which had an immediacy for me, but that weren't made with paintbrushes, or hardly at all anyway.
By the way, do you like Debussy?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Because, well, do you listen to music when you paint sometimes, or what is your relationship with other fields of creativity apart from acting?
Yeah, I mean, I do. I'm not a connoisseur of classical music, but I do listen to lots of different things, including Debussy. Not so much in the studio. In the studio, I don't tend to listen to. Sometimes, but it's not a regular thing. I listen to a lot of music at home, a lot of jazz. And sort of contemporary music, or music from quite a broad range of music, a lot of African music as well. And exploring new things. Yeah, I'm very eclectic in my musical.
Wonderful. Yes. Yeah. How about photography? I'm sure many people ask you this question, but it needs to be asked, I think. Do you make use of taking photos in daily life, or whatever? What's your relationship with photography?
Well, it's interesting. I just take photographs on my phone, like most people do these days. But I hardly refer to them when I'm actually working. I actually prefer to refer to my drawings as a sort of primary source material. Because I find photographs can be too static. Occasionally I might refer to photographs, but not. Yeah, it's more if I'm walking along the Bosphorus or something, I might take a few photographs. It's almost like an extension of looking. Okay, I'm going to look for compositions, look for things that interest me, but I'm hardly referred to them again. It's more part of the process. Yeah.
How about technology? Using computer stuff, etc. what's your relationship with that area?
I do actually quite a bit of digital drawing, and I just regard it as another sketchbook, and another form of sketchbook, really. So I draw on the iPad, and I've been doing that for many years now. And in fact, an exhibition I had at Berkshire University a few years ago, I included some of the videos, the animated videos of the drawings that I do, which are quite nice to show the process of how I build up layers within an image and change things as I work through the image. It's not a case of perfecting the image, it's a case of constantly changing, erasing, putting things in, taking things out. Yeah. So yeah, I'm not averse to technology at all. Yeah.
And at this moment, I'm not sure if the viewers can see both of us plus, in addition to painting. I'm not sure.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. And how about in paintings like these, it is probably more difficult to decide when to leave the painting without adding or changing anything else. I mean, usually it's said that a painting is never finished. It's simply departed or left aside. Does a voice in you say that, okay, this is all right now until I want to do something else?
Yes, well, yeah, firstly, going back to that idea that I think one of the things one really has to learn as an artist is what works for you. And for me, I've realized what works for me is actually to work on quite a few pieces in my studio at the same time. Because I think also that idea of what works for you is, how do you keep your artist self entertained and interested all the time? And the way I do that is by having quite a few things going at the same time. I work on big and small pieces together. And then the whole thing about finishing a painting stops being such an issue, because you really kind of emerged in all these works which are having a conversation with each other and moving between big works and small works. And then a painting might say, you might look at a painting and say, okay, this one looks like it could be finished. And then what I'll usually do is think, okay, I'll stop there, I'll go home, I'll come back in the morning, and then usually the painting either immediately it's just finished, or something just niggles at you and bugs you, and you've got to go back and as you're working on something else. So you learn to trust that process, I think. Yeah.
Yes. I enjoy saying that I never finish my work. That there are always, I mean, who am I to say that I have finished the work? I cannot be so daring. For me, so I enjoy saying that this has come, I feel and think that sense that this work has come to the point of presentability. That's what I say. That's the daring thing I say. And then some poets prefer not to make any changes, but there is a certain poem, 2-page poem, and I reworked on it for 46 years, and only 2 pages. But actually, why I changed some words, the concepts, etc., in itself would be actually interesting. So, I mean, you enjoy the fun as well. I don't know if all artists are like this, but I don't know. I mean, you're adventurous. Is that the word in English? Adventurous?
Yeah, I think
adventurous.
So. Yeah, I think so. I like discovering. Yeah, I like discovering new things all the time, and I like being open to new things presenting themselves to me. And I mean, in that way, painting is such a fascinating pastime because it it does that for me. Yeah.
And contemporary artists are luckier than the previous generations because you can keep, even if you give away or sell or no longer keep, even if you don't keep something any longer, you still have the image, which is a luxury for thousands of years many artists didn't have.
Yes,
well, technologically, we have a limitation here in terms of our conversation, the time aspect, unfortunately. But without putting a full stop, what would you suggest to young earthmates?
Well, I think make art. I think it's such a crucial thing because there's so much in the world, you know, in being pragmatic or in what we're seeing in this crazy world with politicians and that, which are conspiring to narrow things down, conspiring to make things be seen more in black and white. And I think art continues to have this incredible potential to allow people to present their stories, to appreciate other people's points of view. It's to promote compassion for our fellow earthmates. I think all of that is so much part of what making art is about. And yeah, I mean, as well as all the things which might feel more urgent, it is as urgent. Yeah, I think that's
it's probably not a luxury, it is a vital need, actually.
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Anything else you would like to mention? Maybe a lot, but just
well, yeah, I think to fellow earthmates, I think similarly it's important that we keep our sense of, you know, against everything that we see around us, we keep our sense of joy and we keep our sense of wonder in our earth, because that's a way of asserting that the earth is not just for our use, you know, the earth is for our wonder, and to keep wondering and feeling humble in the face of that extraordinariness.
A wonderful finishing touch. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Tarık. Lovely conversation.
And I enjoy saying we're together at the end of a conversation or whatever. We're together. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.